Alrighty, hello, my name is Ahskance. I teach CV and anti-CV tactics. You may have heard of me, and I do have a special guest, which is this way, and he can introduce himself.
Hey guys, I'm Seven. I don't play carriers. I play surface ships only, and so hopefully we can give two sides of the same coin here today.
Yeehaw. All right, so just as a fun little thing, I actually met Seven because I was in an Audacious and he was in a DD, and I got to shoot him, and he was not happy about that fact. And I have a policy that, you know, if I happen to see somebody in game or I see somebody in the chat or something while I'm doing the thing, I may send them a raid later. And I knew Sohn, I'd heard that name, but I hadn't seen Seven before. Says, well, hell, I shot him. You know, he was in the DD. I'll send him some love. And we ended up having this back and forth, talking about, well, you know, maybe if you'd done this, maybe if you'd done that, you could have reduced the damage or even avoided it entirely. And he didn't just, you know, laugh me out of his channel. He listened. He thought, okay, well, you get me a clip. You can tell me. I'm not exactly going to be happy about it, but I'll give it a go. And I respected the hell out of that. And I even bought him in Alaska because I was so excited. But so I thought this would actually be pretty cool for him to see these the rocket plane changes and how they interact with destroyers, because literally that's how we met. And I'm going to be honest, he hasn't seen this yet. And to my knowledge, he hasn't seen the changes. Yeah, you haven't seen the changes? Cool.
That is correct. I am going in completely new.
I am expecting his jaw to fall off when he realizes how extremely awful this is going to go for the CV.
Yeah, what was interesting is, that first time we met, you know, it was one of those moments where, you know what, CV players aren't evil human beings. Like, there's a class of ship in the game, and the goal is everyone who's enjoying the game is for them to be more enjoyable for everyone that's playing, and not OP one way or underpowered the other way. So it was an interesting conversation when we first met. Appreciate that.
Well,
and I love the Alaska.
Stuck with me. Oh, rawr. It's a great chip. That's why I got it. Share the love. All right, so I'm going to set up this first clip, and frankly, it's going to take a little while. So I'm actually going to start the clip so that we can start seeing it while I am going through and kind of talking about some mechanics as well as what's going on. Now, I do have it muted so that you're not going to hear me and me as well and do some like weird multiverse of madness kind of silliness. But right now, we've got me in a carrier looking around trying to find evidently a Kitakaze. So we had a volunteer from the channel hop up on the public test server, and we're going to try to interact with this. Well, the rocket changes, what it is that you're going to be placing this reticle X amount of seconds into the future of where this destroyer is supposed to be. So right now he's not spotted. Crap, we're trying to lead him, but it actually turns out, well, Japanese rocket mechanics are kind of interesting. So let me describe this real quick. When you're having your attack phase, you can see just there, we saw some yellow over on this side. That's the prep phase. While that reticle is yellow, you can maneuver quite a bit. While on live server, you have 3 seconds of prep phase. On the test server, you have 2. That's really important because you could whip around in a 90-degree turn, kind of like what you just saw there, and then you have to place that reticle, catch that line, and then ride that line all the way to the shot. Well, with only 2 seconds remaining, you just can't pull in the same way that you used to. So we talked about prep phase. What about the shot? Well, once you actually get that green reticle, you can place it on the water. And with the Japanese, you have a 4-second timer if you're on the Ryujo, a 4.5-second timer on the Shikaku, and a 5-second timer on the Hakuryu. So not only do we have to see where the Kitakaze is, we have to place this reticle 4.5 seconds in front of where he actually is. And you can see me there. I try to cut that 90-degree turn like I do on live, and I just don't have the time. You're going to see this prep, and we run out, and well, we have to stick the line. We can't play with it, so we're going to just take the shot. And yeah. So I think you've probably seen me play once or twice on my channel.
I have seen you play before, yes.
And I'm going to ask, what are your thoughts of what you're seeing?
So there's a couple of things I'm noticing here from the CV point of view, right? The amount of time you have between actually spotting a Kitakaze, which is not a small destroyer, right? That's not a primarily stealth destroyer. So the amount of time you have post spotting is just incredibly limited, because I've watched you on live, I guess, you know, watching you stream and stuff and playing with you in divs, and you do a lot of moving the planes to make your shots. This is a bigger change than maybe the patch notes would indicate, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. So if you look, and we'll probably be able to see this right here, it's going to be a shot. And the thing that was described was, well, you're going to see some bullets, right? You're going to see some bullets that are going to mark out where this is going. But we're going to place the reticle now, and there's some animation, and then the bullets show. And the bullets show about 1.5 to 2 seconds prior to the shot. Well, when it takes 4 seconds from that reticle placement, that's 2 seconds that the plane's already committed, that you're not actually giving a visual indicator unless like the DD is looking at you. I just have to say, like, this is going to be so much different in the sense that if you can't really spot the DD you're trying to strike unless you drop a fighter. But if he has the ability to burn down a fighter, that's not going to last very long either. So if you're catching a destroyer out in the wild where it's got no support at all, your ability to impact it, I mean, even this shot looks good, right? That looked okay. Nope. 4-second lead time. 3 rockets.
Yeah, so it looks like you're having to make a decision between spotting or attacking. I don't know. What were the differences? What were the differences in the time allotment you have? You were mentioning kind of the time allotment. So the Kitakaze is not an agile destroyer.
No. So the Japanese, well, now that that's gone, we can actually start to queue up for the next one. And let me go ahead and pause this, and we'll start looking around for the next. So I should have this open, and in fact, I think I do, but I'm not going to be able to translate that into the screen, am I? So, okay. So the Japanese have a 2-second prep time and a 4-second attack window. The British have a 3-second prep time, which gives them a little more maneuverability, which we're going to see here, because this is going to be the British Implacable. So this is the Tier 8 carrier. We're coming out with the rocket planes. So having the 3 seconds of prep time and still having that ability to hard turn around means we have the ability to set up a shot better. Plus, because they're slower, it's easier to spot a DD and strike it. We're less likely to overfly. And also, the British only have a 3-second delay as opposed to a 4-second delay. So you were asking, well, what's the difference? The British have a 3-second delay. The Japanese have like a 4 to 5-second delay, depending on the tier. And the US have a 4 to 6-second delay, depending on the ordnance. Tiny Tims are all the way out to 6 seconds. So they might have a tighter reticle, but you'd have to leave that destroyer really far. And I think it's got a longer windup time, so it's even harder for you to try to spot. But you can already see with this, we've got that 3-second time, so we can slam on the brake and kind of wrench it around and catch that better line to set up the strike. Although he's turning into us, so right now he's kind of running the planes away. And then once we do get the strike, we don't have to lead quite so far. So in this case, the British rockets are going to be much more responsive. But even still, we're kind of chiseling at him. And you can see just how far we're still placing that reticle ahead if he chooses to turn in, if he chooses to slow down. I mean, there's just so much time for the destroyer to react.
Yeah, the Kitakaze here, I was mentioning earlier, and you kind of agreed, it's not a ship, not a destroyer known for its agility. And you're really talking about Minotaurs have this level of agility. So it's not just making the destroyers more capable. There's other ships that are going to be harder to work on, not just destroyers. As you well know, you and I have talked a bunch about this. I feel like the destroyer and carrier interaction needs work. But this seems like a little bit bigger change than I had originally thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Now, I'm starting to get a feel for the lead. Plus, as I said, this only has that 3-second lead, so it's technically the most accurate HE rockets. The German rockets, which we're not going to look at in this, have a much faster shot timing. The Weser, as well as the Parzival, is only like 2.5 seconds. So it's much more snappy and responsive. And then the Richthofen, the Tier 10, has 1.5 seconds. I've read that online that it was kind of mathed out. So it's not as real time as it is currently on live, but it's pretty close. And because those German rockets really need that precision shot, having that faster animation timing is going to be good. But we're able to get on the Kitakaze here, so at least we're able to do some damage. I was actually really ecstatic that we got him below half. I mean, the last time you saw, he rammed us. But here, I mean, he's turning in. Maybe we get a piece of this. Maybe. We got a few in there. We got 5. So
now, were there any damage changes associated with rockets, or is this all timing?
It's all timing. It's all about the time between placing the reticle and this little animation interaction, and then out go the rockets. So it's an accuracy change. It's not a dispersion change, but it's like it's an accuracy in the sense of lead time. And you can see that once you've engaged that animation, you can still skip the animation, go to your remaining planes, and continue the attack from different angles. So maybe if you see where he's evading, you can try to get that follow-up. But to me, the biggest thing off of this, you can still spot a destroyer for your teammates. So your teammates take the shots. If this destroyer is locked in mortal combat with an enemy DD, I mean, he's not going to be paying attention to you. He doesn't care. I mean, he might look over the shoulder or something, but for all intents and purposes, he's not paying that much attention. Now, with the Lexington, this is going to be our third little example. The Lexington does not cut 90-degree turns. It has long, lumbering moves. It's got a 3-second prep time. So technically, that would mean you have more maneuverability, but the rocket planes are not maneuverable, so that just kind of sucks. However, they have a 4-second lead time on the HVARs and a 6-second lead time on the Tiny Tims. So we're having to forecast, 4 seconds in the future, kind of like with the Japanese planes. And I do want to say that our volunteer destroyer, I think he was starting to get a little tired or maybe a little overconfident because he just wasn't dodging the way that he was before. And we were getting some pretty good hits here. So on the plus side, I mean, once you learn how to place the reticle, it does feel like you can get the interactions that you'd like. But you still have to remember what the destroyer has in terms of ability.
Yeah, so it seems like Ahskance, you're kind of saying here that it's a nerf to rocket planes, not a nerf to rockets, right? It's a nerf to rocket planes. So the agility of the rocket planes come into play, the timing of the launch comes into play. So you're having to do a lot more work. And carrier is one of the few things in this game you have to do to have any sort of quick twitch, like even semblance, with the throwing the planes around and stuff like that. Nothing else has to do that. So you're making that a little bit harder, and your predictability is making it harder on you, but easier on the destroyer. But if the destroyer is not paying attention, you can still do some work on a destroyer just like you could before. Or if a ship is stationary, it's basically like it was before.
Yeah, right here, I see this turn. If you give me a shot, I'm going to take it. So like you're saying, it's not the rockets that got nerfed, it's the planes. You give me the shot, I'm going to find it. So it's not that it can't happen, but it's a hell of a lot harder to do than it is online or on live. And I don't see it as a bad thing, because I think when the rework came in, part of the rework is that carriers were supposed to be more contained. Instead of like dancing around 5 or 6 different little puppets, you just have your planes that you're flying or your hull that you're moving. You're not in like 12 different places at once. And I actually see that as really important. But I think the unintended consequence here is that you have more accuracy with what you do, because you're literally guiding at every step of the way when you're going to take that shot. And I just don't know if Wargaming really thought, ooh, well, if they're really accurate, what's the thing that really doesn't want to get hit? Well, destroyers, I wonder how that's going to pan out. And ooh, buddy, it did not pan out in the destroyer's favor.
Right.
So this next clip, so we've seen from what the carrier sees. We've seen the Japanese, we've seen then the British, then we've seen the US. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to unmute this. So you're going to hear past Ahskance, woo! And he's going to be talking about what he's doing, why he's doing it. Is he speeding up? Is he slowing down? What's he seeing, etc. So during this, me, commentator Ahskance, is going to shut up, because otherwise that'd be like weird. And Seven, if you want to talk or just kind of see what you're seeing from a destroyer's eyes and maybe listen and tell me if I'm saying stuff that sounds utterly stupid, feel free to talk all over this one and just see what it looks like from a destroyer side of things. Realistically,
yeah, sure.
There are clan battles tonight, so I can't just do this forever.
So you chose the Lifan here. Okay.
Yes, I've been playing the French stuff.
Yeah, did you guys intentionally choose destroyers that were susceptible to planes? Because the Kitakaze is just so big.
So I'll go ahead
the
and let them know
Lifan
where
is
we
not
are,
great
and then we'll
AA.
play.
Or is this just random choice?
Well, I picked the French one. I will let this run actually, because we'll eventually get planes. I picked the French one because I was challenged to play French destroyers on stream because they have bad aerial detection, they have terrible AA, they have no smoke. So it was like, well, if you're in against a carrier, the carrier's going to shut you down, and I just didn't have that interaction. So I'm going to play this just because I had been playing it as a comfort pick, and now I'm going to unmute the stream and I'm going to chill.
Okay.
I guess he's playing the Tiny Tims.
So here is where the French destroyers and gunboats in general do have an advantage, is you're maintaining the heading against the rocket planes. So you're making those planes do a lot more work from a positioning standpoint. And I've always not understood why people say, you know, AA is the only way to fight planes. There's a lot of ways you can make planes do stuff you want them to do. And if you're making anything in this game do something you want it to do, then you're winning the battle. So like in this case, you moving right towards those planes is keeping them out of position.
Oh, no way in hell. That shit's back here. Yeah.
That I don't think that one was ever much of a threat. And so he's using the Lexington, so he has the 6-second lead time, correct?
I'm sorry, one more time. Yes, I think that's a 6-second lead time because he chose Tiny Tims for some reason, but woof. Dodge.
Okay, so there's the tracers. You were easily able to dodge around the tracers. I don't know how much that is. So the tracers actually, when they shoot, the last places the tracers hit will kind of spotlight little specks on the water, and that's actually where the rockets will go. And I was firing just to keep myself lit to help him find me. And nope, under lead. Yeah, okay, I see what's... I mean, you're having no problem whatsoever. And it could be as much as it's a new mechanic and the carrier players figuring it out, but you're having no problem whatsoever maneuvering against these planes in a French destroyer, which has basically no AA.
Will detect us, so we can let
and you're even helping him spot you. Because if he was having to spot you and attack, which is what we were saying, the carrier's having to choose between spotting and attack. You're letting him spot you, and he's still having a hard time.
Yeah, I think I watched somebody playing with the Tiny Tims, and it was just, they couldn't do it, man. So like, you can see the animation.
Yeah, he can't land a shot on you.
It's a good line, though.
I want to point out at this point, he's I think run 5 times at you, or 4 maybe, and you have 21,300 hit points out of a possible 21,300 hit points.
So he dropped a fighter because he couldn't see us.
He did shoot down a couple planes, though.
Showing him broadside here. So he tried to slow down so that if I went dark, he'd have to reacquire me. Sometimes it takes about half a second before the ship appears. US planes are extremely
yeah, he's having a heck of a time, man, just trying to keep you spotted and find a way to position against you. So you were pointing out earlier, when the destroyer is not locked in combat with something else and is only paying attention to the airplanes, the destroyer has a much greater chance than it did previously. Is it too much of a chance? I'll let other people decide that. But you are having no problem in a very weak anti-aircraft destroyer manipulating the planes to the point where they're not useful against you.
Yeah. Now, I do want to point out, I learned this later, that according to people's timing, the Tiny Tims have that 6-second lead. Oh. That the Tiny Tims have that 6-second lead time, which is just massive. If he was using HVARs, it would only be 4 seconds, so that might actually be a significant difference. But yeah, with the 6, it's just, there's nothing, man.
Well, and you've got the speed boost on here, which in the French destroyers, that's how you dodge, right? You don't dodge turning as much as you dodge accelerating. And with that 6 seconds, I've seen you use this tactic multiple times now. You know his reticle is in a spot, and acceleration is a valid way to keep the planes from hitting you.
Keep yourselves lit. Yeah, if it's got to pick a spot on the water, I mean, if you move past the spot, if you stop before the spot, you go slow, you go under, you go over. I mean, there's just so much opportunity. But I'm gonna, there is a point where he gets a hit, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't know where it is, and I think at this point, I think we've seen enough. Now, granted, this is with Tiny Tims. This is with evidently something that's really They've manipulated the timing so it's 6 seconds long in its delay. So it's built for cruisers. It's built for bigger targets that are going to have a harder time maneuvering. It's built for battleships, which really bigger targets with a harder time maneuvering. So that's what it's designed for. It's not designed for destroyers, and you can absolutely see that if you got a Lexington or a Midway that are running Tiny Tims, man, good luck. Unless this destroyer is totally fixated on something or is just beached, I mean, good luck, man. All right, so the next one that we've got, I went ahead and added some Baltimore bots to the enemy team because realistically, you've got 3 ways to interact with a destroyer if you're in rocket planes. 1, you shoot them. But if you can't see them, maybe you drop a fighter consumable. All right, well, it's going to last as long as it lasts until it gets shot down or until he runs away from it. And then you're right back into, I can't see my target. How do I lead this? So that's pretty on shaky grounds now. How else can you deal with a DD? Well, if he's busy attacking something, which we'll see in the third example, then he's lit. So you can start taking lines on him, or you can light him for your teammates. And in this example, we're going to see some Baltimore stuff where, let me go ahead and mute it. We're about 10 kilometers away from the Balties, and we're about to get lit. You're going to see some shells come in, but while he's not able to get damage into us, the Baltimores are all going to chuck out some stuff, and at 10, 11 kilometers, they're just not going to connect. And for practice sake, I think after maybe he takes another shot or two, we're going to get close to the Balties. So as we get into that 8 kilometers, those shells are going to start connecting. And there's not a ton to learn from this specifically, but it's just to say your rockets may not have that direct interaction, but you can still spot. And spotting is still incredibly powerful when the enemy has teammates that can shoot you, right?
Now, do you think, Ahskance, that they were shooting for that dynamic change? That's not the one I necessarily, when you and I have talked, we have harped on. But this is a really great point. Spotting is a carrier superpower, and it still is a carrier superpower.
Absolutely. Well, okay, I don't think this change is in response to spotting, but let me go ahead and stop this and let's talk about what I think this change is for. All right, so we'll deviate a little bit, and let's talk a little philosophy, a little game kind of concept here. So I'm talking with people on the forums, and there are a lot of folks that don't like CVs. Hey, I get it. And they're going to have a whole bunch of points and counterpoints and things like, well, did you consider this? Did you consider that? Well, if you're in a destroyer that has bad AA or no smoke or whatever, what is your protection from planes? Your teammates. So the CV can be alone, one man, and you have to have a second person to stay safe. Well, that seems uneven, right? Okay, understandable. Well, with this rocket change coming through, and suddenly maybe you don't have the ability to kill a destroyer. A lot of CV players are really scared about that. What happens when that sneaky Shima that goes all the way on the edge of the map, goes on that secret mission to come find and kill the CV hull? Well, you don't have the ability to strike him, so how are you going to defend yourself? And you're dead. Okay. In that case, there's one enemy player, and you need yourself and a teammate to deal with the DD. So there's kind of some similarity there. There's some symmetry, 1v2, 2v1, whatever. Specifically, though, with this, a cruiser will typically have enough AA that it's not going to be able to blunt all the CV strike. A battleship's not going to have enough AA that's going to blunt all the CV strike, but they tend to have enough health pool that they can absorb a strike or two and keep on carrying on. Definitely for the battleship, kind of for the cruiser, depends. Destroyer, they just don't have that health pool. So that interaction gets really dangerous and really lopsided when your rocket planes can find a DD that's isolated and just hammer him 20% of his health. Bam, hammer him. Maybe you get a good shot. It's 50% of his health. It's huge, Well, what this does is this pulls that direct interaction power back. And it starts to put that power in the hands of you and your teammates. You are going to light the DD for your teammates to help with, or your teammates are going to light the DD for you to help with. That's going to be the interaction that's going to get the destroyer down, not just CV, handle it, and then the CV goes over and handles it. Now, granted, there's still HE bombs and stuff, and maybe that's something they'll address in the future, but I kind of think that that's a more healthy way to play the game rather than having the CV just be able to go, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to kill you, and you're not going to have anything to say about it.
And it's funny because you brought up the story of how we met, right? And you and I have talked, right? You and I have talked, and the story of how we met in that match was vastly different based on who told it, even though we were both playing the same match. And you and I have kind of compared notes on that before. And so on the destroyer side, I was wreaking havoc on a team, and it was your job as the carrier to undo that, however you had to do it. And so it really did in that match become a situation where you and I were kind of one-on-one a whole lot of periods in that match. Now, you being the carrier, you did a lot of other things as well. But for me, it was like fight or flight. That's the only options I had. And what I'm really interested in this interaction, it's striking me when you're talking philosophy here, and I love to do that, is you're talking about the two highest demand play styles, which are destroyers and carriers, and the most, in my opinion, complex as far as dynamic being. There's a lot of things that can go a lot of different ways when you're playing a destroyer or a carrier, and the team expects you to do one of those 10 or 15 things very specifically at all the times. And so, like, if you choose to go strike a battleship, everyone's like, why aren't you spotting the DDs, right? That's what happens in a carrier.
Yeah.
The same thing happens in a destroyer, right? Why aren't you spotting the battleship? So it's funny or interesting to me that wargaming is now having to tackle these kind of two very complex play styles, which I would say are the high skill, in my opinion, very high skill ceiling play styles. Because I'm going to do away with anyone who says carriers are just easy, win buttons. Because if they were, everyone would be playing them, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not an easy win, but it's a hard class to play. I suck at it. That's why I don't play them. I know it's a hard class to play, but you've got these very demanding classes, and wargaming is now having to look at, okay, that's what we've got to balance, is these incredibly complex dynamic classes against each other, which is a very interesting endeavor.
Yeah. If you even look back, there was a thing, I guess Flamu kind of made it popular again a few months ago when he was talking about it, that community contributors were invited out to Russia, and they had like this presentation talking about, okay, CVs were introduced. We understand there's a lot going on. We're trying to work on this. And they went through a variety of presentations showing like they tried to accumulate all kinds of different data points to create an influence score, like a map influence kind of thing, or game influence. And they found that RTS carriers were just like, that stuff was off the chart. It wasn't even something they could plot. But the reworked carriers pulled it down, but they were still above where a destroyer was in match influence. And they were thinking this is still a problem, so they implemented a speed nerf. That's what they started tweaking AA. That was literally just like patch 8.5 had dropped a day or two prior. So this is a long time ago. But they were specifically looking at how can we rein in, the overbearing influence that a CV can provide. And I think part of that influence rein in, if you look at what these rocket reticle changes are, is if you can pull the CV off of the destroyers to let the destroyers breathe, unless, of course, they're literally in a gunfight, they're sitting 6 kilometers away from a cruiser and they just needed a DD or like a plane to spot them or something. I mean, if you pull that off there, then the destroyers get to breathe and have influence across the match. The planes get to have their influence on the match. It's just not all going to be into the destroyers. Again, we saw in some of those examples, the rockets can still hit. They can still hurt. But you're going to need some kind of vision constraint. You're going to need to be able to see the enemy you're trying to take the shot into. And because there's those constraints, I think it just kind of gives the influential classes more room to be influential in their ways. And I think that's a good thing. Frustrating, sucks to be nerfed. I'm going to be angry and swearing about it on stream, I'm sure. But in terms of like game design and health, I really think it's a good thing.
Yeah, this is a bigger nerf. I don't want to say nerf necessarily, but it is a nerf, right? Like, it is a carrier nerf. You don't necessarily, or I didn't, right? You probably did because you played carriers. When I read the bullet points, I didn't realize how big of a nerf this was going to be. But when you look at something like a second and a half, right, or 2 seconds of just difference in this game, and it makes an enormous difference when you're talking about the navigability that some of the destroyers do have. So this is a vastly different viewpoint than I had when I just read the notes. That is for certain.
I knew that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you do this, because I knew you'd be looking at this like, what? And I was hoping to get that live reaction of like,
dude, if I played carriers right now, if I completely get it. And most people are not going to have the kind of reasonable mindset you have where you're looking at it and saying philosophically, it's probably better for the game. Like, you're just playing carriers and you're like, this sucks.
I paid money for this carrier and now I can't use it right. Oh man, I've been hearing people that have been really upset for days now, and I get it. But I have enough experience, playing games, being around games, doing stuff, that change is extremely upsetting until you get used to it. And then it's just the way things are. And you might, have some member berries and remember to the good days. But for the most part, when it becomes the new normal, people get used to the new normal pretty quick. And there are going to be some people that are just like, I'm never playing a carrier again. And that's going to stick. But for every new player that comes into the game, they'll never know it the old way. For all the old guard that kind of stick it out and learn it, cool. And just something to look at. And I'm going to go ahead and start rolling this next clip. So what this clip is, we're against an implacable. Now remember, the British rockets are the most responsive. You've got a 3-second lead time and a 3-second prep time. And even there, like, he was able to bingo that shot, but there's still dispersion. So you can still protect yourself by showing the nose or showing the aft to the incoming rocket planes, because they're all still a broadside reticle. That part hasn't changed. It's just the aiming back and forth has. So right now I'm kind of playing as though I'm a destroyer, and I'm trying to like screen for my teammate, the Baltimore, that's roughly 6 kilometers away. So if the CV wants to sit on top of my face and make me deal with some unpleasantness, I can back up a little bit and use the umbrella of the Baltimore to just kind of drive the planes off a little faster. Because if I'm doing 150 damage per second, it might take me 90 seconds to kill off the planes. Well, if I'm with a Baltimore, even if it's at long range, that additional 150 AA, well, that 90 seconds becomes 45. And plus there's flak, and he might have to dodge and juke the flak a little. So it kind of screws with what he's capable of doing. And again, we got an overshot there. So at some point, this implacable is run, and I decide, let's go kill the carrier. Let's go see if we can make this happen. So we've packed up a little bit. We've seen what Balti pressure is. We've still been able to juke stuff, even though it's British rockets, which are technically the more responsive stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom this in a little bit. And I think it's probably about now that let's go kill the carrier. So I'm going to unmute just so we don't have Ahskance all over Ahskance action. And if you want to kind of see what it looks like to be that DD that's YOLOing down the carrier, trying to scrape that pelt before the end bell dings, that's what this is going to be. So we're going to see some rockets and also some torpedoes. No way. Too close. And I would like to note this is an S3VYN, which has a 2.3 aerial detection, not the French DDs that had the 3.3. Too close for that shot. Maybe not. Sorry, what, 2.3? Just close enough. Good hit, too. So that was about 2.5 kilometers run time for how much he needs to shoot. So that's good information. Doesn't see us. Sees us now because of rendering delay. Ooh, no, cut it faster. What was that? Is that 1.2? That's pretty good.
Battle ends in 5 minutes.
I think I need to measure how far it is from when you click to when you actually shoot. I think that would be useful. My pro dodging skills right there.
Dude, that was that was not what we call torpedo beats.
Oh yeah. Now, one thing I do want to point out, hopefully you don't get too much Ahskance on Ahskance action, but that one also hits, is that the torpedoes that are being dropped are being led, if I'm in a broadside fashion, they're being led by 3 to 4 seconds anyway. Nope. So the way that the rockets interact by being led 3 to 4 seconds, CV players are already doing this even now on the live server. When you're torping a cruiser, when you're torping a battleship, or when you're even torping a DD, you're leading by that 3 to 4 second window. So because that's just not even different, I mean, it's the same thing, but you're still gonna have to learn how it feels from this new angle.
Something is striking
Fuck,
me
I
here,
didn't
Ahskance,
see how
and
far that was.
again, I don't want to talk over you on the video, but if something is striking me here, that a lot of times with destroyers, you're choosing between speed boost and the AA consumable. There's a real choice to be made there now.
We need to keep
Do you want to
shooting.
shoot down planes, or do you want to be able to dodge better? I like that choice. That's something I didn't see coming from this change.
You know, I could definitely see that, because the biggest issue with the defensive fire was that, well, it's not going to save you, right? You're not going to shoot down enough planes to keep yourself safe, quote unquote, depending on what ship it is. Am I going to sail into that one too?
Jesus Christ, this bitch likes to slide.
Note to self, torpedo Ahskance if he's on
Yes.
the other team.
There you go. The S3VYN is not a maneuverable ballerina.
It's really not.
The French ones kind of are, but this one, ooh, she is not. But again, like, you can see, if I'm in the middle of doing something, if I'm in the middle of kind of dealing with torps and stuff, it's hard for me to look at the planes over here, but look at the target, but dodge the torps. Suddenly, you know, as scary as this rocket interaction is, when you've got a destroyer player that's just mentally overloaded, there's just too much stuff for them to focus on. Well, can you really expect them to, like, juke the crap out of everything? No. Because they're going to take shell hits, they're going to take rocket hits, they're going to take torps. I mean, as I've skillfully demonstrated.
You've proven.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. You know, I'm glad you're showing this to me. And again, first time I've seen it. Not at all what I expected from the patch notes. I get how the patch notes covered it, but the dynamics of it are very different to me. And I don't hate it. It's not gonna be fun for CV mains right out of the gate, but you know, I've thought this interaction needed some work, and I like it. If you're distracted as a destroyer, the rockets are still very effective. If you're focused as a destroyer,
That might be the kill. God,
it
this
may
bitch
be a
is
little bit
sluggish.
easier to get rid of airplanes, or at least dodge their attacks, or, which seems to be the real
Planes
point,
coming in
mitigate
from that
some of their
angle.
attack.
Yeah, I think the
That will
breathing
be the
room...
kill. Unless we kill him first.
No,
so-
dropped too close. I think the breathing room is just, it's important. Now, at the same time, I know I'm going to be in a game where I'm going to be sad or frustrated or swearing that there's a DD rolling up on a flank and my team can't shoot him yet, but I know this DD's coming in to YOLO something, or I know this DD's coming in to finish off one of my teammates that's low health or something. And without assistance, I'm just not going to be able to handle it. And there's part of me that goes, that's terrible. I hate that. I hate that I can't help my team like that. But realistically, I mean, any game you play, you're going to have strengths and weaknesses. And my strengths might be, I can help against an island hugging cruiser that I can get spotted for people, or I can bomb, or I can interact that way. I can help with, you know, an isolated battleship that's pushing because I've got torps and bombs and I've got tools and stuff for big ships. But it just turns out that maybe this is one of those things that I can't help with anymore after this change. And I'm willing to respect that because there's so much that a CV can do. You know, the CV has the ability to spot. The CV has the ability to go from one flank to the other flank and back again. The CV has the ability to keep itself safe so it doesn't have to worry about running around getting sniped and shot and all that stuff, mitigation and whatever. If it turns out that they're going to pull away on the destroyer interaction and the team has to step up, I know I'm going to be frustrated, but at the same time, there's going to be a part of me that's going to be like, bruh, they changed this. This ain't on me. This is on y'all now. Y'all got to handle this.
Yeah, it'll be on the teams to appreciate that, because I will say the way you play carriers, you know, I've watched you stream a lot. You played as a support class first, right? It's not you don't play as a selfish player. You play them to play a support class. And what I mean by that is you're a force multiplier. So you're either routing ships, you know, sometimes you know you're not going to land a torpedo, you're using it to literally turn a ship broadside to another ship. There's all these tools. Those are still in play. Like, nothing has changed there. They're actually still in play with destroyers. You can still make the destroyers turn and dodge and pay attention to planes. If the rest of the team is stepping up and firing at that destroyer that you have spotted and you're making turn, you still have some strength there, but I think that you've nailed it. I think that the words you used nailed it. I think that the breathing room for destroyers is the thing that I've wanted out of a change, but I don't want to see carriers completely inept right? That's not a thing I want to see. And so the breathing room for destroyers, I like this change. It's a lot more than I thought it was gonna be. But I gotta say, I'm curious to try it and then tweak it more if it doesn't work, which seems to be Wargaming's kind of thought pattern here.
Yeah, everything that I've seen from what Wargaming does is that they're willing to make controversial decisions. They're willing to make controversial changes because honestly, when you're going to announce something like, we're going to add radar to the game, or I think I heard once that the Mighty Jingles himself said, this game is dead because RPF was being put into the game. Nope, you're going to know where they are. It's going to change it. Like, no, it's dead. Well, it's not dead. It's a controversial decision. They put it into the game, and they probably gave it some time for people to figure it out. It's going to take a month, 2 months, 3 months. Some people play every day. Some people play twice a week. Some people play twice a month. It's going to take a little while for it to filter out, for people to figure it out, and then for the data to reflect that. And one of the things that Wargaming absolutely seems to do is just hoover up data from the player base when they're making decisions. And it's like, you can look on a forum and you can ask specific people in surveys, what do you think about this? How do you feel about that? And that's great information. But if you have everybody and their mother telling you, we don't like this, and yet they queue up and they keep playing the game like nothing ever happened, well, you might not like it. And that's something for a designer to consider. Well, we're going to have to work on that. Let's try to make it so they do like it, but it's working because they're still playing the game. And that's important.
Yep. At the end of the day, it's got to be fun, right?
Yeah. So this has actually been much shorter than I expected. Me being Ahskance, I assume this would easily be a 3-hour broadcast, but it looks like, according to my little timer, it's only about 41 minutes, which I think is probably a fairly good sweet spot to end it. So I've had some fun. I hope Seven has had some fun. I haven't gotten a chance to see your visual reactions because of the way I had this all set up so that I could make the cameras work and stuff. But I am hoping to be able to go back and see like some shocked face, you know?
Yeah, there were definitely some of those moments, those like a puppy dog does when it kind of tilts its head, like, really, is that a thing? So that's definitely about where I was on it.
Alrighty. Well, yeehaw, sir. Thank you very much for previewing. I enjoyed having you on, and maybe if we get some changes in the future, we can do this again. But I hope you have a wonderful Sunday, as that is the day that this is being recorded. And to everybody that watched, thank you very much for watching. And you can check out Seven. I don't believe you have a YouTube channel, but he definitely has a Discord and a Twitch channel. So twitch.tv/7. That's S3VYN 7. He runs some stuff during the week. He's got kind of a music thing that he'll kick on. He doesn't run it through Twitch, I guess, because copyright stuff and scary whatever, but he's got kind of a radio station that he'll run. So you can check him out. He's got some cool beats and some cool music all lined up for you. So he's got a nice little after party gig.
Ahskance, thanks for having me, dude. This is always fun. Always love talking with you. Love the philosophy section in the middle. That's always fun. Definitely, I will talk to you soon.
All right. Yeehaw, folks.